My brother looked at my daughter and said, "Your child has no place at the beach house." Then he giggled. My daughter went silent. I said, "No beach house. I'll cancel everything." He froze. Mom whispered, "Are you serious?" I smiled and didn't say anything. It was just the beginning of their nightmare. My name is Claire Vance, and at 35 years old, I finally learned that the people who share your blood can be the ones who try to drown you. For years, I let my family walk all over me, treating my quiet nature as weakness. They thought they could banish my teenage daughter from our family sanctuary just to satisfy their cruel ego. They laughed in our faces, assuming they held all the power. But as I stood there watching their arrogant smirks, a calm, chilling realization washed over me. They were playing a high-stakes game of greed, but they completely forgot a vital piece of paper. They didn't realize that I owned the board. My brother looked at my daughter and said, "Your child has no place at the beach house." Then he giggled. My daughter went silent. I said, "No beach house. I'll cancel everything." He froze. Mom whispered, "Are you serious?" I smiled and didn't say anything. It was just the beginning of their nightmare. My name is Claire Vance, and at 35 years old, I finally learned that the people who share your blood can be the ones who try to drown you. For years, I let my family walk all over me, treating my quiet nature as weakness. They thought they could banish my teenage daughter from our family sanctuary just to satisfy their cruel ego. They laughed in our faces, assuming they held all the power. But as I stood there watching their arrogant smirks, a calm, chilling realization washed over me. They were playing a high-stakes game of greed, but they completely forgot a vital piece of paper. They didn't realize that I owned the board. Growing up, our household operated under a strict, exhausting hierarchy. My older brother, Ethan, was the undisputed golden child. Whatever Ethan wanted, Ethan got. If he crashed a car, our parents bought him a brand new one the next day. Meanwhile, I was the invisible background character, expected to work hard, stay quiet, and never steal the spotlight. When I built a successful career in property management through sheer grit and long hours, my parents barely blinked. They simply viewed my success as an extra safety net for Ethan's endless financial shortfalls. But the cruelty truly escalated when I became a single mother to my sweet, brilliant daughter, Lily. For years, Ethan and our mother looked down on Lily, treating her like an unwanted second-class citizen simply because she didn't fit into their narcissistic mold of perfection. The boiling point happened on a hot Friday afternoon in July. We had all gathered at our family's sprawling lake house for what was supposed to be a relaxing weekend getaway. Lily, who was 12 at the time, had spent the entire morning happily setting up her art easel on the sunlit veranda, excited to paint the landscape. But her happiness was short-lived. Ethan strolled onto the porch, took one look at Lily's supplies, and let out a sharp, mocking laugh. He casually walked over, shoved her sketch pad aside with his foot, and looked down his nose at her with absolute disdain. "Get those childish toys off the table, Lily," Ethan sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "This veranda is reserved for actual family guests, not you. Honestly, your mother has coddled you enough. You have no place at this lake house this weekend. Go pack your bags and find somewhere else to hang out, because we need the space." Lily went completely silent, her lower lip trembling as she looked up at him, fighting back tears of utter humiliation. She grabbed her art supplies and hurried inside the house, completely crushed. I felt a hot surge of rage tear through my chest. I stepped forward, confronting Ethan directly, and demanded to know why he had the audacity to speak to my daughter that way. Ethan just giggled, crossing his arms with an unbearable air of superiority. He laughed right in my face, telling me that I should just accept my place. That was when the final illusion shattered. Before they could realize what they were doing, I looked my brother dead in the eye and delivered the warning that would change everything. No beach house. I'll cancel everything. Ethan froze mid-laugh. My mother gasped, stepping out from the doorway, her face pale as she whispered, "Are you serious?" I smiled calmly and said nothing at all. They thought they had banished us, but they had no idea what was coming. To understand why my calm morning sent an instant chill down my family's spine, you have to know the secret history of that lake house. For decades, everyone in our social circle assumed the sprawling waterfront estate belonged solely to our parents, or that it would eventually be handed down to Ethan as the golden firstborn son. My mother and brother treated those timber walls and sunlit docks like their own private kingdom, a symbol of unearned status that they could lord over anyone they pleased. But they were living inside a massive illusion built entirely on their own arrogance, completely blind to the legal reality of who actually held the keys. Years before, when our grandfather was still alive, he watched with sharp, discerning eyes as my parents and Ethan burned through inheritances, maxed out credit cards, and sank deeper into reckless financial debt. Our grandfather was a brilliant, self-made man who knew that if he left the property to them, they would liquidate it within a month and end up completely broke. That is why on his deathbed, he made a secret arrangement that completely bypassed my parents. He called me into his hospital room, looked me in the eyes, and told me I was the only stable force in the family. Right there, with his estate attorney present, he quietly signed the legal property deed over to me entirely, making me the sole owner of the lake house. To keep the peace while he was alive, we agreed to grant my parents and Ethan a lifetime tenancy agreement, meaning they could use and enjoy the property comfortably, but they had absolutely no right to alter, sell, or dictate who could enter the premises. Because I never flaunted my ownership and let them stay there without ever asking for a single dime of rent, their blinding greed made them completely forgetful. They chose to ignore the legal reality of our situation, assuming the house would just default to Ethan or our mother through probate court. They never bothered to check the county records, and they completely forgot whose name was actually stamped on the legal deed. They thought they were playing a high-stakes game of absolute control, but they didn't even realize that I owned the board they were playing on. Instead of blowing up in anger or screaming back at Ethan on that sunlit porch, I took a slow, deep breath and decided to play the long game. I gathered Lily, packed our bags into the car, and drove away without a single tear, leaving them to their arrogant celebration. They thought my quiet departure meant defeat. They assumed I was slinking away to nurse my wounds and lick my pride. But they had no idea that my silence was actually the sound of a trap snapping shut. The moment I arrived home, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I didn't waste time wallowing. Instead, I methodically pulled up every legal document, original deed transfer, and quiet email agreement tied to the lake house. I knew that if this went to a head-on collision, I needed absolute armor. I called my real estate attorney, David, and scheduled an emergency morning consultation. David reviewed the grandfather's original trust paperwork, shook his head, and confirmed what I already knew. As the sole legal owner, I had every right to revoke their tenancy agreement instantly due to harassment, hostile behavior, and breach of peaceful enjoyment. But I didn't stop there. Knowing how entitled and aggressive my family could get when cornered, I wanted to ensure our safety and airtight legal standing. I hired a local security specialist to install high-end smart locks and exterior cameras on the property's perimeter gates, all synced directly to my phone. I drafted a formal, unyielding notice of tenancy revocation and property closure, detailing every single violation they had committed over the years. With every digital file securely backed up and every legal clause locked into place, I leaned back in my chair and smiled. For years, they had treated me like a doormat, expecting me to absorb their insults while funding their lifestyle through my silence. Now, the quiet strategy was complete. The stage was set, the documents were printed, and all I had to do was wait for the weekend to unfold. They thought they owned the sanctuary, but they were about to find out what it means to be locked out of your own illusion. The following morning, the sun beat down on the lake house, illuminating the perfect weekend getaway my family thought they had entirely to themselves. I drove back up the winding driveway with Lily sitting safely in the passenger seat, her spirits restored and her hand tightly holding mine. When we stepped out of the car, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses spilled out from the back patio. My mother, Ethan, and a few of their close friends were lounging by the water, basking in their absolute certainty that I had retreated in defeat. As we walked around the house, Ethan spotted us first. His drink nearly slipped from his hand, and his smug smirk twisted into an ugly, aggressive scowl. He stormed across the lawn, pointing a finger directly at my face, demanding to know what on earth we were doing back on the property after he explicitly told us to leave. Before I could even open my mouth to respond, my mother hurried over, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment in front of their guests. She loudly scolded me for having the nerve to return, calling me shameless and claiming that I was ruining their peaceful family gathering just out of spite and jealousy. They expected me to shrink back, apologize, or start a screaming match that would entertain their friends. Instead, I didn't raise my voice by a single decibel. I calmly reached into my tote bag, pulled out the thick legal folder containing the notice of tenancy revocation and property closure, and handed it directly to Ethan. My attorney, David, stepped out from behind our car right on cue, holding the official property deeds and a formal copy of the emergency restriction order. Ethan stared down at the paperwork, his eyes scanning the legal jargon as the color rapidly drained from his face. David spoke with absolute, clinical precision, announcing to the entire patio that the lifetime tenancy agreement was officially terminated due to continuous harassment and breach of property conduct. He gave them exactly 1 hour to pack their personal belongings, load their cars, and vacate the premises completely, warning them that local law enforcement would be called for criminal trespass if they refused. The silence that fell over the patio was deafening. The wealthy guests who had been laughing moments before quickly grabbed their bags, whispered among themselves, and hurried toward their vehicles in utter shock, desperate to distance themselves from the unfolding disaster. Ethan let out a frantic, desperate laugh, turning to our mother and screaming that this had to be some kind of sick joke, that I couldn't possibly kick him out of his own home. But my mother wasn't laughing anymore. She snatched the deed from Ethan's trembling hands, read my name stamped clearly as the sole legal owner, and went completely pale, staggering backward as the crushing weight of reality finally hit her. They realized that their arrogant game of exclusion had blown up right in their faces, leaving them stranded, humiliated, and entirely locked out of the sanctuary they had abused for decades. 3 months have passed since that unforgettable afternoon, and the peaceful quiet of the lake house is no longer broken by arrogance or entitlement. Stripped of their unearned sanctuary, Ethan and my mother were forced to face the harsh, humbling reality of the financial and personal messes they had spent years trying to hide from the world. Without the lake house to host their high society illusions, their social circle rapidly dissolved, and they had to downsize into a modest, cramped apartment across town, finally learning what it means to live without a safety net. Meanwhile, Lily and I spend our weekends on that very same sunlit veranda, painting, laughing, and breathing in the cool breeze of absolute freedom. Standing up to them didn't just protect my daughter's dignity. It taught me that true peace only comes when you refuse to let anyone else write your story. Now, I am curious about all of you watching this right now. What would you have done if your family tried to banish your child from a home you secretly owned? Would you have given them a second chance? Or would you have locked the doors forever? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to tell me the city you're watching from so I can see how far our story has reached.